So in 2012, after moving to New York, I decided to start another space in New York. This was in 2012. And since we had been showing several New York-based artists over the past 3 years, we decided to keep the same name, kind of just as a joke, half as an experiment, half as a joke, just to see what the relationships between the two sites could be. And we took the same model that we had in Philadelphia at that time, which was basically rotating through members each exhibition and allowing them complete control over their slots. So we didn't, for example, like vote on exhibitions via committee or like look at artists together. It would be something like January is Robin's month, so Robin can do whatever she wants. And then February is Nicole's month, and then Nicole can do whatever she wants for that slot. And then March would be my month, and I could do whatever I want with that slot. So instead of like voting by committee, we all were able to like kind of express our own unique artistic and curatorial voices. And then in the end of 2014, we opened the LA branch of Tiger Strikes Asteroid. And this was the first time that I hadn't been directly involved in the founding of one of the locations, so it felt very different. This was started by a couple colleagues and friends that had moved to LA and they wanted to start their own space. And I mean, I guess probably very cunningly or strategically, they wanted to like just sort of have that little bit of like name recognition when they initially started this space. But yeah, it was exciting because people seemed to be interested enough to want to sort of like add themselves to our project. And then at the end of 2015, we opened our Chicago branch of Tiger Strikes Asteroid. And then we also started the process of becoming a nonprofit kind of a few months later. The short answer to why we became a nonprofit was that I felt like we could be a nonprofit incorrectly enough to serve our purposes. And then since becoming a nonprofit, we're able to get donations from artists and other supporters, as well as like receive some grants. But a lot of our funding still comes from our membership dues. So all of our members, we pay different amounts monthly, and that at this point maybe that's about like 33% of our budget. At the beginning it was 100% of our budget, but it still is like a huge chunk of our annual budget. Oh yeah, and feel free to interrupt if you have questions too. It's a pretty small group, so we can keep it very informal and intimate. So one of my favorite projects that we've done was called Artist Run at the Satellite Art Show. This was in 2015. So we were invited to curate an entire hotel that was slated for demolition. And at that time, our Philadelphia site had been talking about wanting to do some sort of like artist run project art fair in Philadelphia. So this kind of fell into our laps, and even though we were all kind of like burnt out, it just seemed like I don't know when we're going to have another chance to do something like this. So we decided to just go ahead and do it. We had an open call for artist run spaces, curated a hotel full of installations or environments. We had like 39 different installations representing 18 cities. I think soil was either in this one or the second one. I can't remember. I have to look back at my notes, but that's how I first heard about soil in Seattle. So we had done two other kind of commercial art fairs, in the years previous, and they were both fine, but they felt kind of off. But for me, Artist Run felt right. Being able to give other artist run spaces and projects a place to show in Miami for basically free, as well as focusing on installations or environments, really brought artists and the creative process to the forefront. So we were really able to give a lot of these artist run projects a huge like audience during Art Basel week. And this fair was a little bit off the beaten path, but it was like critically acclaimed and got a lot of press and a lot of buzz and um, a lot of like FOMO when people are like, "Oh, I didn't see it." It's like, well, too bad you missed it. Sorry. This project just kind of confirmed for me that Tiger Strikes Asteroid exists for me as a platform that highlights and privileges artist-run projects and the building of relationships with these projects. Artist Run felt like a speed residency, and kind of the shared trauma of how disgusting the hotel was created an immediate sense of camaraderie and community. it was truly horrifying. I don't have pictures of them, thankfully, of that. So the pandemic has been kind of a clarifying and surprisingly productive time for us. Obviously, in 2020, all of our spaces were closed, so we had to pause all of our planned exhibitions. But we're still paying rent on five spaces. So, we're like, okay, what are we going to do with these things that we're paying for? And we kind of like, interestingly, kind of independently all arrived at this idea of using our spaces as residencies. So basically, we decided to use our spaces as residency spaces. And we just invited artists to come use our spaces and just, there's no expectation to show or even finish anything, but we just wanted to give artists spaces that they could go to and like make work or just think about their work or that was like relatively safe at that time. We also started this online project called TSA PDF. And this was a series of printable exhibitions that was curated by our members. And basically, people were invited to download and print out these exhibitions on their home printers and then hang them up in their house. And then those photos that they shared became our installation shots, which we, shared on our website. Um, so these exhibitions were kind of this fun and experimental way to bring something physical and meaningful into people's homes as we're, socially distancing. And we organized like 22 of these exhibitions from 2020 to 2021. The pandemic was the first time in like 10 years that we hadn't been caught up with the daily grind of putting together shows. So we were able to really reflect on what was important to us as an organization. I thought for sure a lot of people would leave TSA, but it became clear that what was important to everyone was to remain a part of that local and network-wide community. And that's really what I think keeps us together. Although it isn't perfect, I believe we are working toward what Bell Hooks called a love ethic and how we approach structuring our organization. So as I've grown with TSA and TSA has grown with me, I've been thinking a lot about TSA and projects like TSA as structures for artists to build relationships or like a platform for possibility. I know for me that a lot of my close friendships and almost every professional opportunity have been either directly or at least indirectly influenced by my work at TSA. Artist-run spaces have allowed me to create a sense of belonging and context for both myself and for my work. And the past several years have clarified for me that the core of TSA is not necessarily the exhibitions or projects themselves, but rather it is one, being able to give artists the agency and resources to dream up and organize these projects. Two, giving artists the agency to create and maintain like a local and network-wide community. And finally, to collectively have the agency to create the communities that we want to belong to. There's plenty to be upset about in the mainstream art world. Questionable practices and ethics from board members and other powerful leaders in art institutions, a white male supremacist curriculum, and a market that's driven by conservative white taste. So, how do we as artists find a way to engage with this system without becoming consumed by it, without becoming a part of it and either implicitly or explicitly continuing the status quo? I think about this a lot, both as an artist and as someone who organizes so-called alternative spaces and projects. I realized that while TSA called itself an alternative arts organization, we never really explicitly laid out what we were an alternative to. And I think a lot of artist-run organizations never take the time to clarify what they're trying to be an alternative to, and then just end up mimicking and becoming like essentially underfunded versions of commercial galleries and reproducing the same systems that we are supposedly trying to push against. And I see this especially in artist-run spaces that have made it over that first 3 to 5 year hump, after that first lease cycle, and you see like priorities start to change. I've been thinking a lot about Legacy Russell, who in her book Glitch Feminism asks, what does it mean to fail a system that has historically failed you, that was designed to exclude you? Russell calls this failure or glitch a necessary act of resistance and refusal, one that can break open new possibilities and potential for new worlds. I also think about this question from the opposite angle. If a system has historically failed and excluded you, what would it mean to quote unquote succeed in such a system? Or to put it another way, what is the cost of inclusion in such a system? What systems and structures am I implicitly or explicitly perpetuating by allowing myself or even desiring to be included in the mainstream art world? I know at many points, daily, probably, I've wanted to withdraw from the art world, especially over the past few years, as we've seen kind of these performative responses by institutions, and the ways that institutions have raced to make surface level changes in their rosters without addressing the systemic and organizational-wide changes that actually need to be made. But every time I'm ready to cut ties, I always find myself coming back because I realize that even within this broken system, there are many amazing artists, curators, and thinkers that I've met or am inspired by. And I also realize that both myself and my work need a community and a context to exist in. The art world is much bigger and much more expansive than the mainstream market-driven art world. And I really think it's possible to find and create our own little communities within it. One thing I've learned through my study of martial arts is that although martial arts is the pursuit of self-discovery, growth, and self-perfection, training partners and teachers are an essential part of that process. In other words, it's impossible to learn on your own. In a similar way, I think we need community and other people as artists. Our art has no meaning without other people and art objects to relate to, both contemporaneously and across time. But how confining is it to limit our context and our community to the narrow ones defined by the mainstream art world? Many of us have internalized the idea that success as an artist means showing at the biggest spaces in the biggest cities, the equivalent of being like an arena rock band. But for me, some of the most interesting and challenging music comes from the thriving indie music scene. And I wonder where the equivalent of that could be in the art world. Thinking about like the post-punk scene in the UK in the 70s and 80s, or the Elephant Six Collective here in the US in the 90s, where bands and music lovers would make their own zines, trade cassettes, and play in small venues for each other. A true alternative community. Visual art's a little different in terms that the means of distribution are much more limited. But I think we can do something similar, especially now that we're all hyper connected through the internet and social media. But only if we allow ourselves to imagine that there are other paths to being an artist and showing work besides showing in the big institutions. Another idea I think about a lot is Brian Eno's concept of the genius. Traditionally, and this is like in opposition to a genius. The traditionally genius is this isolated individual that somehow magically comes up with an idea on their own, and usually this person is a white male for some reason. Genius, on the other hand, the recognizes that no artist is an island, and it acknowledges that any great idea is the result of a community of thinkers working together that is sharing ideas and expertise, competing with each other, and pushing each other to grow. What I love about this idea is that it recognizes that no individual can really claim ownership over an idea, but rather it's just a matter of whether or not the community and labor that supported you is acknowledged or not. Like Robin, we were talking about like parenting, like that labor is totally invisible to most of the world. Yeah. But while not every group will necessarily create great ideas, I think what we can do with a community of like-minded spaces and people is to build the relationships so that we can create the conditions for genius. The cliche is to call artists world builders, but if we are building worlds through our work and then only striving for our artwork to exist in and succeed in the existing art world, what are we really building? How can we expect an art world that relies on manufactured scarcity and is tethered to a white supremacist curriculum and history to be the expansive and inclusive community that we want it to be? It's far more expansive, interesting, and transformative even to carry that world building energy outward by creating true alternatives to the mainstream art world. So here's some quotes that I like from Adrienne Marie Brown. Yeah, I need to move this. Yeah, I love we hone our skills of naming and analyzing the crises. I learned in school how to deconstruct, but how do we move beyond deconstruction? Who teaches us to reconstruct? How do we cultivate the muscle of radical imagination needed to dream together beyond fear? So, what would an art world look like that operated out of a sense of generosity rather than like a scarcity mindset? What if it assumed from the start that there are multiple canons and histories and lenses through which we can look and think about art? What if this art world acknowledged the rich and specific regional histories of each place rather than focusing on the same few cities and the same few artists? That operated out of what bell hooks called a love ethic and focus on the right relationships between people that are being cultivated rather than on the end product. I think all of us has a role that we can play in creating, supporting, and building these alternatives in the classrooms, through pop-up shows, zines, and even artist-run spaces. This is the art world that is being cooperatively by all of us and was being built by our predecessors through actions big and small. This is an art world that we can feel proud to be a part of. As Adrienne Murray Brown says, we are future ancestors, and the small actions we take now can reverberate and set the course for what the future art world looks like. Thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you so much, Alex. That was so inspiring. And they're like, I'm just going to sit there and look at some of your quotes after this is done, I think, and really ponder on them. Because I think you gave us a lot to think about with the advantages of thinking about alternative spaces. So as a counter to it, to play devil's advocate, what are the disadvantages maybe of an alternative space and maybe more advantages that you didn't mention?
I mean, the disadvantages are funding for
Yeah.
sure. Trying to either, yeah, trying to either raise funds through grassroots funding, which I think is the more ethical way to approach fundraising, or trying to like convince um sort of traditional funders and foundations that what you are doing is worth supporting, even though you're kind of doing something counter to what is traditional. I think
Right.
that's a big disadvantage. Um, and I also think for me, like I don't know, it gets tiring trying to like constantly have like a strong enough sense of self and like internal compass to like constantly be like, no, I am defining my own metric of success, even though everything I learned told me the opposite. And if I'm being honest, like that's like very tiring. Some days I don't feel that, and sometimes I'll open up Instagram. It's like, oh, my friend's going to show in the Venice Biennial, and I'll feel
Absolutely.
that sort of twang of jealousy or something. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
So those
appreciate
are
your
two
candor
that I
with
can.
that.
Those are two that I can think of off the bat.
Yeah, so we have some questions starting to come in and
Okay.
thank you so much for putting them in the chat, but does Juju, do you want to just go ahead and maybe share what your question is?
Yeah, hi, Alex. It's really
Hi.
exciting to have you speak and talk about your experience. I've been, TSA has been on my radar for a bit. And I'm just wondering, something that really piqued my interest was how did you go about organizing an artist-run gallery fair, like a collective I mean, we have several artist-run spaces here.
Mhm.
We're really lucky in Seattle to have that. And so I'm just wondering, because I think about having like creating some kind of uh, a way to bring collectives in Seattle together. And I'm curious about this artist-run fair, the collective
Mhm.
fair. And if you've done it more than once, and like just interested in hearing your thoughts and strategies on that.
Yeah, I mean, well, the first one kind of came about because we were basically given it. You know what I mean? Like, somebody that I had a relationship already was organizing this alternative fair and had like several venues. And he was like, "Hey, does TSA want to curate this hotel I have?" So that's kind of how we got the space. And then in terms of organizing, it was just like, okay, we're just trying to find out where the what artist run spaces we kind of knew of, and like trying to like reach beyond that a little bit. Like so, um, reaching out to friends of friends and like putting out this like quick open call for folks to apply. Uh,
Okay, so it wasn't just artist run spaces, it was also just artists, local artists or community people in the community. Did they have to be members of a
no,
collective in
it
order
was
to
all
show?
artist run. It was all artist run spaces,
Oh, okay.
and a lot of the collectives or artist run spaces, they did show some of the organizers' work. You know what I mean? But that wasn't
Yeah,
a requirement, or that wasn't
I see.
an expected. Some of them showed like other people's work. Some of them showed a mix. It was up
Okay.
to them. Yeah.
Okay. To
Um,
them.
but yeah, I mean that was a kind of a unique situation because we were able that year we were funded by Art Market Productions, so they paid for some of the permitting and stuff like that, and then it continued for a couple years, but the spirit was never the same because we weren't able to pay for weren't able to have those things paid for. So then it made things more expensive, and then that sort of changed the metrics. That changed the calculations of people that wanted to participate. It was no longer essentially free for them to participate.
Mhm.
But like in LA here, I didn't organize it, but one of our members, Carl, like he is so good at organizing things like this. Like he'll find these like spaces, and he'll just like reach out like to everyone he knows and try to get all these spaces um to like show like in this like one weekend long. I guess it's essentially an art fair. Like it's like a
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
festival of like artist run spaces and artists.
Yes.
It's very DIY. So he is able to do it. And I think it's like it kind of has slowly built up over the years for him. Um, and every time he does it, seems like he builds more and more relationships, and it be kind of becomes like proof of concept in itself. Like after the first year, like, oh, see, we did it, and then like we can do it again.
Yeah.
So a
Right.
lot of times I think that first time is kind of the hardest thing.
Right. You said like becomes more of like a flywheel that
Yeah,
you,
yeah. It's like a chain
yeah.
reaction. Yeah. And you learn
Yeah.
that, the first time is always the hardest, right? If you've ever taught, the first time you teach a course, it's always the hardest. And then, it just becomes you iron out the kinks like as you go, as you see like the unexpected things that happen. Especially if you're
Right.
able to have the same space over and over again. You're like, oh, like this room like has a leaky ceiling. So it's not, you're like things you just don't anticipate when you're entering the
Right.
space the first time.
Right. Cool.
Does that help? I
Thank
mean,
you.
any other questions or?
Uh,
Yeah, there's a
yeah, I
question.
mean,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, it does. I just want to say thanks.
Oh,
Um, there is a question. Thank you, Juju. There's a question from Ning. Do you want to speak, or would you like me to read your question?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a ton to expand on my question here. I guess
mhm.
the context I can provide of where I'm coming from asking this is that I'm like pretty early in my career, and I have a few artist friends who, we're thinking of coming together and like creating our own collective. And yeah, I think we're all kind of still figuring out like what this career trajectory is supposed to look like. And I was really
Okay.
interested in hearing your thoughts about like what does it mean to challenge the definition of success in a system that has different priorities than your own. So yeah, I guess I'm
Yeah.
curious from your experience, like what has it meant for you to have this collective like shape your career trajectory, or like what are you finding like you've been able to like redefine for yourself what success is versus like what you may have initially been taught?
Yeah. That's a great question because like I'm in like the midst of my midlife crisis. So like I've been thinking about this a lot. There's two ways I can answer it. The first is like like my name is always out there, like so there's times when I'm not showing that much, but I'm always doing stuff. So people know me as someone in the art world and have been like and know me as someone who makes space for others. So even when I'm not showing that much, like I'm still out there in the world, like I'm not talking about my work today, but like, like I'm out here right now, in this Zoom room, and people get to know me as a person or whatever. Um, and like I mentioned, like I think that basically almost every single like showing opportunity, like exhibition opportunity that I've had is at least indirectly related to a relationship that I made at TSA, if not like very directly related to that. Now that doesn't mean like I've had a lot of commercial success, but I've shown a lot of like cool alternative spaces or at like smaller commercial galleries that like people I know through TSA like either run or like are guest curating at. So I don't know if my career looks like that, like commercially successful. And then like kind of the second part of that question or the second part of the answer is like, I don't know. I'm trying not to think about a career anymore, to be honest. Like I'm just thinking more and more about like I just want like a rich life, and like I feel like trying to like climb this imaginary ladder, trying to like do all the networking and stupid stuff you're supposed to do to like get in front of people that like I have nothing in common with. Like it just feels like very boring to me. And like I hate like going to openings and like, in my head, I'm always making this calculation, like, okay, if I go to this thing, like what's the chance that someone cool is going to be there that's going to like enrich my life and excite me and make me like intellectually curious about something. And usually that's not at like a Pace gallery opening or like some blue chip gallery opening, right? So I don't really go to those, but I go to like, different things or like more like interdisciplinary sort of like offerings or lectures or something like that. And that's kind of like, I don't know if it's good or bad, but like when I'm in a good mood, I'm like, man, I know all these like really amazing people and they challenge me and inspire me. And that's kind of like all I can ask for, I think.
Thanks,
Thank
Alex.
you. I really love that. Thanks for answering my question.
Well, yeah, of course. I hope my daughters eat something. Yeah.
So, Anne has a question about,
Mhm.
would you like to speak to your question, Anne?
Sure. Thanks for sharing your information with us. I really appreciate it.
Of
And
course.
I'm part of an organization called Earth Creative, and it's artists who makes work about climate change.
Oh,
And
wow.
there's nearly 100 artists that are involved, and they are around the world. And while there are a number of people that live near me, and we have had events that include these artists, knowing people that are living in Chile or Spain that are part of this organization is a very, in a way, awkward situation because you don't really have
Yeah.
direct communication with them.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about maybe how do you connect with these people and perhaps put together some kind of an event where there's this international basis of artists and that they can all be part of some collective event.
Yeah.
Online, I'm sure it would probably need to be. But I was just curious if you had any comments about something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think you and Juju should get together and make something like this happen. But yes, I think I experienced this maybe not in as extreme of a way as you're describing, but we have members all across the country. And a lot of them I'll probably never meet, to be honest, but and some of them I have met. But I do think that one thing that we do is we've been trying more and more to really prioritize like getting together in person every once in a while, you know? And I think that it's really like online is great and it's a very useful tool and it makes like impossible things possible, but like there's something really special about like finally meeting someone. Like it's like, oh, like finally, like I get to see you in person. Like, oh, you're taller than I thought. Oh, you're shorter than I thought, or whatever. And it's, like just like it's something like it somehow makes the relationship real to me. Like I've had multiple experiences where I've been kind of like friends with people online for a while and we've been talking or going back and forth. And then when we finally meet, it's like, oh, like it's like we're old friends and you're just like catching up and giggling or doing whatever. So I think I'd say like um, sometimes it's tempting to always think of a project that you have to do to have that excuse, but I think like getting in person, that's like a good enough project to like prioritize like within your group. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you don't need to make it like an exhibition or a convening or something, but just like, hey, we should all this year prioritize meeting up together, whoever can, and just get together because it's those the relationships are going to outlast the collective, right? And the relationships are the most important thing, actually. Like it doesn't matter, like if TSA stops tomorrow, it doesn't matter. Well, it does, but I'll speak for myself. It doesn't matter if TSA like falls apart tomorrow, but like the relationships are still there, and within those relationships, you can make new projects, right? Like because that's for me, that's what's the most important thing. So yeah, so that would be my advice is just to really try to prioritize figuring out, like obviously there's financial constraints and stuff, so you can't do it like all the time, but maybe like once a year, once every 2 years or something. We're gonna try to really prioritize working towards this and like, okay, how can we plan it? How can we fund this? Like, can we
Mhm.
scale back on another project to prioritize this rather than having it be like, oh, it'd be nice if we got together, and like if we have extra stuff. But if you prioritize it, then like you can make it happen.
Okay. I'm gonna see if I can find someone that can buy airline tickets. Except I don't want to do airline, so
Yeah, maybe in a
it's a
couple months. I don't
challenge.
know. Yes, it's a challenge. I almost got stuck in Tennessee last week, so I'm acutely aware of the challenge.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Do we have any more questions from the group at all? Oh, Rebecca has something. Do you want me to read it for you? You would like to speak?
I can ask. I was wondering if
Yeah.
you found it easy or difficult to get press for the spaces for promoting your spaces and shows and or reviewing them.
Yeah, that's a great question. When we started the Philly one, there was like nobody writing about art in Philly, right? So one of the things that we did there was like we always also had someone write an essay for each show. At the beginning, that kind of died off eventually, but yeah, I think it's really hard. It was really hard to get press. We've gotten some like pretty high profile write-ups and stuff, but it took like long time, And now I've started writing recently, like the past couple years, and that's been very revealing to me. Like I get so many emails from like PR firms working for like mid-tier to like higher tier galleries, because they can afford PR teams to like research like, oh, who do you think would be a good writer for this? And then they'll just cold email you. So it just makes me realize like how miraculous it was that like TSA never gets any press at all. Because like we don't have a PR fund. We can barely get our press releases out like a week before the show opens. So I don't know. I'm sure someone more like professional than our organization would be able to get it, but yeah, it is kind of the landscape is like much tougher now. I will say that solo exhibitions are much easier to get press for than group exhibitions. So if that's part of your calculus, then that could be something. And the more time you have for the show to be up, the easier it is to get press as well. If you have very short runs, it's some publications won't uh, publish a review if the show is not up still. Not all of them, but some will. Um, and yeah, I mean, but I think getting press is usually a lot of like personal relationship building. So as you're part of the scene or as you're part of the community, um, you just like there's nothing wrong with like being like, hey, Rebecca, think you'd really like this show. Don't do that every show, but like if there's a show that you actually think that they'll like, it's like, oh, like, I read your writing on this, like, and I think this show would actually like make sense for you. Be happy to meet up with you at the space, or that artist would be happy to meet up with you at the space sometime. Just love to just hear your thoughts or love to get your feedback on the show. Like, you don't have to like ask explicitly to write something, but I think that's like one strategy that can work sometimes.
Thanks, Alex. We have a question from Anne Marie. Are there
Mhm.
individual members of TSA?
Yeah. Oh, so these are good. Yeah. So there are individual members of TSA. Each site has. Actually, let me share my screen because I can answer a couple of things at the same time. Uh, let's see. Oh wow, I just wrote it out. That's good. Okay, so yeah, but each site is basically comprised of about a dozen artist members, and they help program the space, gallery sit, and take care of the day-to-day aspects of running the exhibition space. Um, and basically, I didn't realize this, but we're loosely organized using a system called sociocracy. And basically, it's like each circle, like or committee or subcommittee, whatever you want to call it, has like a defined aim, and then we'll have like links between all of the circles to like pass information up and down the or like across the network. So so like here's like kind of like an organizational chart, if that makes sense. So we have these 5 sites, and then like even within each gallery or each location, we can have little tiny subcommittees. Like somebody could be charged of like the admin stuff. Somebody could be charged of like making sure we have enough paint and stuff, or like gallery maintenance. Somebody can be in charge of like press stuff, or like somebody can be in charge of like receptions or whatever. You can make as many little circles as you want. But the idea is that like you are kind of the expert of your own circle. So this is to try to prevent like I always use this example, but like it's like, hey, what kind of cup should we get for the reception? And having to like ask and wait for like 12 people to vote. Like nobody wants to waste their time and energy doing that. So it's like, okay, like Alex, just pick a cup. I'm sure it's fine. You know what I mean? Like we trust you to do it. If there's something for some reason I need to get back to the larger group, then I can do that. So that's like how like the individual sites are generally run. And then 2 members from each site form our steering committee. And then so like quarterly, all of the steering committee gets together, and they're charged with like both advocating for their local sites needs and also like taking information back to their sites so that we're all kind of all on the same page. Um, does that help? I think that was Anne Marie's and Stephanie's question. But it's still herding cats. Yeah, it's still herding cats. No matter what, it's yeah.
Does that make sense, Anne Marie? Or do you have any more questions with that? Uh, Oh, I think you're muted. Okay.
Yeah, I just put myself, gave my audio. Is that okay? Um, yeah, I was just looking at the page here and it looks like it's all organized around these different sites around the country.
Mhm.
Um, so to be part of TSA, you have to be part of one of those sites or start your own. Are
Correct.
you expanding or adding new collectives?
I'm not against expanding, but it has to be the right timing and the right people. I don't. That's kind of a vague answer. I know it's probably not a word. Well, yeah, we're open to it. I mean, everybody would have to vote on it as well, and it's kind of a long process. But yeah, we're open to it. It needs to be like the sort of right group of people. Doesn't have to be the right city. Yeah, like, we don't care really where it is, but there has to be a good reason for us to have another mouth to feed, with our very kind of like meager, we share like a lot of our resources, financial resources. So like we just got done our budget meeting on Sunday, and it's like yeah, how can we spread this out to make it kind of benefit everyone? Adding more would, obviously make it uh, make I don't know, the pieces of the pie smaller. I don't know, metaphor too.
Thanks. We have a question from Stephanie here. Says,
Well, it looks like you're funded.
oh, sorry. Sorry, Anne Marie. I didn't.
Go ahead. Yeah.
You can go
Oh, go
ahead,
ahead,
Anne
Anne.
Marie. I'm
Yeah, yeah.
sorry. I think there was a lag. Did you want to finish up your thought?
Oh, no, it looked like most of their TSA's funding comes from the state of New York. So I wondered how that worked if
Oh
you
yeah.
had these other locations around the country.
Right. No, that's a really smart question. So technically we're a New York-based corporation. So that means that some like government granting organizations, like for instance, like California Council of the Arts or like a Philadelphia-based organization, they'll only give money to organizations that are incorporated in that state, if that makes sense. So we don't feel like having five separate nonprofits. I mean, maybe that'll be a bridge we cross later, but right now we only have one nonprofit, which is technically a New York-based corporation. So that's why the governmental funds that we can get are only from New York State. Um, we can get private foundation money from anywhere. Um, you know, I mean, the NEA was a joke before Trump, and it's like even more of a joke now. But like, we could potentially get like NEA grant funding, like federal grant funding. But like unfortunately, like sometimes we can't get like for instance the Mike Kelly Foundation grant here in LA, which I think would be a really good one for us because we begged them, but like it's like, hey, we've been here for 12 years. Like, can we like no, you have to be like a actual corporation in LA.
Right.
Does that answer your question, Anne Marie?
Yeah, thank you.
Right. And I think that answered a lot of Stephanie's question too. But Stephanie, did you have anything you wanted to add
Oh,
or?
Yeah, I thank you so much. The even like the brief glimpse of the org chart was super helpful. I am s- still thinking though about like, so there's a steering committee. Is that
mhm.
steering committee kind of setting goals and strategy and sort of the big picture for the whole, the whole organization in that case?
Yes, yes,
And are any
yeah,
of those, I'm not looking at your website, are any of those paid positions? Because I'm not sure how you're doing all this.
right. No, I'm paid part-time,
Hmm.
a stipend, and we have a co-director now, another network co-director who's also paid a stipend. And the steering committee, it's volunteer. So that's another really, to go back to your first question, Robin, that's a huge disadvantage is constantly
Hmm.
figuring out like, well, honestly, if like this sort of like self-exploitive model is worth pursuing, like especially um, it's very different at 44 than it was at 28 when I started Tiger Strikes Asteroid, in terms of energy level and responsibilities and stuff like that. So this is something I constantly think about. But yeah, we would love to. I would love to. I'm part of another organization, and it's also run by a steering committee, and they give all their steering committee like a couple $1,000 stipend every year, which I think is really cool. And I would love to get that to happen at TSA. Um, and I would love to have um, like a decent salary for like whoever's running the organization. But it's really difficult to go from a volunteer run org to having paid staff because you go from like a zero line item on your budget to like, I mean, even 60,000, which is not livable, but then it's like, then every year you have to raise $60,000 or else, you know what I mean? Like that's a number that can't really be negotiated. It can only go up. It can't really it can never really go down. Um, so that's kind of where we are as an organization. And we haven't really figured out how to get to that next step yet, if I'm being completely honest.
Hey, Alex, I'm going to just chime in.
Hey.
Thanks so much for all of this. I wonder if you could just give, if somebody's interested in starting their own collective, what are the five top tips that you would recommend? Good or bad?
Good or bad?
The
Okay.
good, the bad, and the ugly. Give it to us.
Um, I would find people that are not people already in your circle. That'd be my first thing. Like, so for example, like if you graduate from UCLA or something, like you don't want to form a group with just other UCLA grads because that closes the circle right away. So that would be the first thing I'd be thinking about. The second thing I'd be thinking about in this in this landscape, which is very different than when we started, is how can I do it as cheap as possible? So like what kind of like maybe renting a space is not even tenable, to be honest. Like when we started the Philly one, like we all paid like I think our rent was like 200 some a month for this tiny little studio. And so we all paid like 30, $40 a month, and that was enough to cover rent. That's impossible at this point, right? So maybe like in an apartment or a studio or something like that. Um, so those would be the two things I'm thinking about when I'm starting out. And then, I mean, strategically, if you're starting a new space, like I would be like very strategic about who I invite to show in the first couple shows because you want to like sort of open with a bang and like get people to like um, post about your show, like, hey, like, like I'm showing at this like new space, blah, blah, blah. And then like, they'll share that and then people start to like follow you or maybe be aware of you. So like the first couple shows, like I think are very important to like sort of like, you want to like kind of like arrive fully formed almost like and make sure that people kind of you're able to like get the word out quickly. Because if it's just
Yeah.
like, oh, it's just like the same person having a show, like that's just like that's not going to generate anything. Um, and I think like really prioritizing having really great documentation of your shows is important as well. Since especially if you're not in like, I mean, even if you're in one of the major cities, like nobody sees anything anymore, to be honest. Like everything just lives on through JPEGs and through like, Instagram or whatever people are looking at. So
Yeah.
so your first, it's unfortunate, but your first impression is almost 99.999% of the time is going to be someone seeing a digital image of the space. So
Yeah.
those are some of the things I think about. I'd say don't worry about what your structure is.
Hmm.
Like, don't be, it doesn't matter if you're a nonprofit, no profit, whatever. Like, I don't think that's important to figure out. Like, just be flexible and like change things. When we first started out, we put together like a list of artists and then we all like voted on it. And then I was just like, man, these shows are like kind of mediocre. They're kind of bland, but it's because we were trying to like it's like what is an abstract painter,
Mm.
performance artist, figurative ceramicist, like what are they all going to vote on? It's all going to be like, oh yeah, this is okay, there's no like kind of extremes. So we
Mm.
kind of quickly abandoned that model and tried to make it more to the model where it's like every month, like and anybody can do whatever they want. Um, that's just one example of
Right.
like maybe like being flexible about your structure. Not like, well, this is
I
the way
see.
we're founded, and we have to like do that forever until we die. And also, I guess like you can go into it not thinking it's going to be permanent. I actually think
Mm.
permanence is probably like temporary projects are really great, and that takes a lot of pressure off of you as an organizer too. You know, those are some things. I don't know. Does that help?
That's great. That's really great. There is a question in the chat from Ning. How do
Mhm.
you determine acceptance criteria for new members? You sort of talked about the steering committee, and Anne
Mhm.
Marie, asked about new sites in different states if you are open. How do you come up with some kind of criteria? Maybe that's another tip. If someone was
Yeah.
thinking of starting this, what are some tips on that? I mean, you
I
mentioned
think
not
it's
being all from the same university or,
yeah,
choosing some
yeah.
diversity there.
Yeah, so all of the sites have their own methods. Generally, though, it's somebody that somebody has worked with before, just so we know, like, okay, this person is gonna like answer emails. I used to have this like secret test where it was like you needed to be like either married or in a serious relationship because that told me that like you could actually compromise with someone and like figure out how to like resolve conflicts without like just like burning bridges. But it needs to be someone that is like-minded, so that wants to be generous or that is generous and has demonstrated that and that um because yeah. So usually it's somebody that we know, not like well, like so it's not like friends necessarily, but it'll be like, oh, like I did a project with this person and they were great to work with, and we're usually think about that. we're usually also thinking about like diversity, kind of we try to think about it in every respect. Like, uh, what do we need as a group? Like, is it all painters? Like, maybe we should have like some non-painters, right? Is it all like white folks? Maybe we should have some like non-white folks. Is it all like people that are 44? Maybe we should have someone younger, someone older, like, so we try to think about that in every respect, as well. Um, yeah, those are kind of the internal conversations we have.
Yeah.
But I will say that some members that we think are going to be great end up being god awful, and some members that we think that start off god awful like end up being like some of our most valuable members. So it's like you kind of can't plan how people are gonna people. So we don't you can't really plan around that, but we try. I mean, for us,
It's
I think people kind of understand what we are at this point, so that kind of is self-selective too. Like they know
yeah.
it's not going to be like a career jump for career boost for them necessarily.
Hmm.
Did that answer your question, Nate?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to like see what sort of criteria to come up with because like again,
Yeah.
like my friends and I are trying to understand like, oh, like how do we even build a collective and like what is that gonna mean for us? So yeah, any insight is really helpful.
Yeah, I think you really just build it. I mean, there's like the phrase like building the ship as it sails, and I think that's really what you're doing, right? Like,
Nice. Are there any other questions that we have? So, there was a wonderful question that Nicole wrote in our list of questions for
oh,
you that
nice.
I would love to maybe end this off on if nobody else has anything else. But what role can artist-run spaces play in helping artists shape, preserve, and share their legacy outside of traditional spaces?
What role can I mean, I think it's the only other place it's going to happen. It's like either you
Yeah,
can
I like that.
wait around for institutions to change, but you'll be holding your breath a long time. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, you either wait for them to change or you like just make something yourself. And where's that? Have you guys read that article by that essay by Howard Zinn, The Optimism of Uncertainty?
I have not.
Remember? Okay, maybe
Yeah,
this will let me find this quote. Sorry, it'll take
sure.
me 1 second. I read this essay a lot when I feel sad, which is very, very often, unfortunately. Um,
I'm gonna have to read this whole thing later after
yeah,
the
yeah.
call. Mhm.
Oh, here it is. Yeah, I'll put it in. Okay, there we go. It's good. So, yeah, change does not come as one cataclysmic moment. Beware of such moments, but as an endless succession of surprises moving zigzag toward a more decent society. We don't have to engage in grand heroic actions to participate in the process of change. This is the part I was thinking about. Small acts, when multiplied by millions of people, can transform the world. And then this sentence I love too. Even when we don't win, quote unquote, there's fun and fulfillment in the fact that we have been involved with other good people in something worthwhile. So
Oh,
that's kind of how I think of it. Like it's like
I
even if we don't win, like we found some people and we like built a rich life for ourselves. Um, that's I don't know. I feel like that's the best we can do. Maybe that's kind of like nihilistic or something, but that's kind of how I feel like I've been trying to structure things in my life recently.
that is an
That's
absolutely
awesome.
Yeah, that is an absolutely beautiful way to end this. And I wanted to say before you go, first of all, a huge thank you so much. This was wonderful. And for those of you on the call, our next networking call is in December. And it is, oh gosh, and I'm blanking on the date right now. I believe it's the 15th, but I will follow up about that. And it is another Monday, and we will be doing our networking and celebrating successes of 2020. 2026. So, kind of Alex's philosophy of connecting with each other, connecting with people, this is a perfect opportunity to do that. So, again, thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
all.